Hey, long time no see, for a few reasons. One of them is that I moved house, and that was extremely stressful and time consuming. And then after I moved house, I went into hospital and had pneumonia and heart failure. So, I'm just thriving. Things are going really well, as I'm sure you can tell. It's been quite a few months since I made a video, and it's not like I was particularly regular with posting, even before that. The only things on my channel are TBR videos. Anyway, so let's make another TBR video. Because of everything, my reading has slowed right down. So this TBR is definitely unrealistically ambitious. But I'm hoping to get a lot of reading done during the Not Safe for Workathon 69-hour readathon, of which I'm a co-host. And I'm also participating in Make Me Read. I'll need your help with that, by the way. And Becca's Bookoplathon. I'll have links to the announcement videos for all of these down below because you don't need me struggling to explain them at you. So, for Not Safe for Workathon, there will be prompt drops. We only know the first bingo pool at the moment. See links in the description if you're not sure what I'm talking about with all this. The first prompt calls for a book with hard to swallow subject matter. I have a few options and they're all kind of cop-outs in different ways. One option is I have a bunch of mysteries and or thrillers that are due back at the library in the first half of the month, and there's death and cults and shit in those, and that's heavy, but not in a way I would consider hard to swallow necessarily. Or I've been slowly reading Grey Bees by Andrey Kurkov for months at this point. I'm still only a third of the way in. I started in May and I teared up reading the forward because this is set in a village in the Donbass. Civilians living their regular lives during war always gets to me, and obviously what is kind of a lukewarm conflict zone in the novel has only gotten hotter in 2022. I'd say this is hard to swallow. So I'm really intrigued by the idea for Make Me Read, hosted by Ellie from El Grey Books. Basically, I have a bunch of books picked out, more than I think I can get to in the 2 weeks between the 17th and the 30th of September, based on my current pace, and I'm going to pop them all into a poll that will be linked in the description, and have you vote on what you most want me to read. I'll tally up the votes and read as many of them as I can in the 2 weeks, going from the most to the least votes. Let me show you the options. All the White Spaces by Ali Wilkes. The thing that drew me to this is that it's cold horror. Horror involving extreme cold, being set in an expedition to Antarctica. Automatically makes me think of John Carpenter's The Thing. I haven't seen it pitched as being anything like The Thing, and I believe it's historical paranormal horror, but I'm enamored with horror set in extreme climates. I don't need autumnal horror. Give me freezing cold or blistering heat and isolation so complete that it comes back around to feeling oppressive and claustrophobic. Also, I believe the protagonist in this is a trans man. So, choice one. So, in a similar vein, Taaqtumi. I've been trying to get this anthology of Arctic horror stories from First Nations authors onto several TBRs. I think my audience is mostly Australian, but I don't want to be accused of Southern Hemisphere favoritism. So, I've now got both poles represented on this list. Moving on to another anthology from First Nations authors, I've been reading This All Come Back Now, edited by Mykaela Saunders. I've been reading this collection of speculative fiction short stories by Indigenous Australian authors for several months, and I'm still only 3 stories in. This was one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and I pre-ordered it and started reading it not long after it arrived. I loved what I read so far, but I'm going to need some help to prioritize it on my TBR, so... Another book I've already started, Revulsion, Thomas Bernhard in San Salvador by Horacio, Castellanos, Moya. This one I'll probably restart because I've only gotten 5 pages into. I originally picked it up from the library for Invisible Cities, whichever month we were reading from El Salvador, and I've struggled with it. It reads both fast and slow. The writing has this really propulsive rhythm, but every page is a solid brick of text. The entire 188 pages is just one long monologue. So, Nightcrawling by Leila Mottley. I heard Matthew Sharappa praise this one even before the author became, I think, the youngest person ever on the Booker long list. I don't think I've yet been led astray by his recommendations, and in particular on Instagram he called the writing metaphorically specific, which feels like a good way to describe some of my favorite writing, so I'm curious to see what about this made him say that. The Dragon's Bride by Katie Rabbit. I bought this one physically because of the cover, and it'll be my first Katie Rabbit. I know Paige will probably vote for this one. This may seem out of place with some of the others, but I'm really interested in getting into monster romance because it seems actually more interesting to me than just like smutty hyperbole about like regular human anatomy. Let's go full monster. The Way of the Househusband Volume 5 by Kōsuke Ōno. I also have Volumes 6 and 7, which I hauled recently in a video on April's channel, Aprilius Maximus. I love this manga series. I've been having a really rough time lately, so I wanted to throw it on here. Maybe I'll read this one, which is the one I'm up to. Maybe I'll read all three of the ones that I have. It's joyful, slice of life comedy. It's basically just one joke repeated, but it's funny every single time. And finally, in the Make Me Read options, The Whispering by Veronica Lando. This is a mystery set in far north Queensland. I've seen it called rural noir, which is a subgenre that's often used to describe Jane Harper's work. I'm always keen to find more Australian authors, and in particular books set in Queensland, which is where I live. I don't live in far north Queensland though. I like it hot, but not that hot. So that's the stack for Make Me Read. Link for voting will be in the description. So lastly, I'm going to be participating in Becca's Bookoplathon. I don't have footage of my rolls to show you because I did it digitally, and since this is like my first video back, I decided not to overcomplicate things by like screen recording and stuff. So I originally did 5 rolls, but I got 2 doubles and ended up with 7 rolls total, which is not too bad. So for roll number 1, I landed on People, a book with people on the cover. So for that, I'm going to be reading The Companion by EE Ottoman. This is a historical romance focused on a polyamorous relationship between 2 trans women and a trans man set in the late 1940s in upstate New York. It's meant to have nice cottagecore vibes, and maybe I need that. There's a person on the very pretty cover. So for roll number 2, I got published or set since 2020, and for that I'm going to read Manhunt by Gretchen Felker-Martin. I actually have a bunch of recent releases on my TBR this month, but because this one is post-apocalyptic, I consider it a bonus that it's probably the most futuristic. It's a 2022 release, and I think that J.K. Rowling had some pearl clutching about it. I'm hoping for a fun, campy horror. For roll 3, I got Favorite Trope, and I'm going to be listening to the audiobook for The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. I'm not a big trope person, and I don't necessarily look into specific tropes for books before I read them, but I do love books that feature cults, and this book features a cult. And this is a mystery thriller that heavily features a cult, so that's how I'm fitting into the prompt. For roll 4, I landed on Autumn/Fall. Read a book that reminds you of Autumn/Fall, and for that, I'm going to be listening to the audiobook of Shadow Heir by Rochelle Mead. I don't think about seasons a lot because it's basically just summer for like half the year here, but I have been doing a reread of this series, and this is book 4. I'm honestly not enjoying the reread that much, and I kind of just want to get it finished, and so this is the last book, and so I'm going to finish it out. I remembered liking it a lot more the first time around. In this paranormal series, one of the love interests, because there's gotta be 2, is a Fae King whose kingdom is perpetually in autumn, so that's my autumn connection. For roll 5, I got Features of Death, and I'll be reading The It Girl by Ruth Ware. This is the latest mystery thriller from Ruth Ware. It features a death, and I assume mysterious circumstances around the death, because it's a mystery thriller. I think this one is like the classic, like, woman is witness to a murder 10 years ago, and then, like, now in the current time, what if man convicted not do it? For roll 6, I got Multi-Perspective. I'm going to read The Appeal by Janice Hallett. I feel like I might be stretching this prompt a bit with this one because it's basically presented in kind of like an epistolary format with a bunch of documents and letters and interviews. So it's not the traditional multi-perspective that this prompt is talking about, but we're getting the perspective of multiple characters through different formats. So that it's perspective hopping in that kind of way. For my 7th and final roll, I landed on Lowest Rated. I'm going to be reading The Frightened Ones by Dima Wanos. This was the only prompt that I needed to pull something that wasn't at the top of my priorities to read this month to fulfill, but I sorted my Goodreads physical TBR shelf by average rating, and this was the absolute lowest. I don't know why it had such a low rating, but I own it physically, so obviously I have high hopes for it. I haven't read from this author before, but I have read from this translator before. It's translated from Arabic by Elizabeth Shawkat. So I think that I'll probably like it. And so that's all my readathon things. In addition to those things, I do have a couple more library books that need to go back. And also, of course, there's the obligatory next book in the Sookie Stackhouse series, which is Dead and Gone, Charlene Harris. I've been reading the series all year. I've mentioned in basically every TBR. Things are pretty much over with Quinn, so what even is there to say about the series anymore? So that's my TBR. Overly ambitious, yes, but obviously I'm not expecting to be able to get to all the ones from Make Me Read. If I did, that would be amazing and wonderful, and I'd love that, but realistically, I suck at reading lately. I'm not going to pick these up. I know I'll drop them, and I don't want to. So...